Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris Sost, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you so much for tuning into today's episode.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Gig Economy Lounge. Today we're going to be exploring the potential for higher earnings for rideshare drivers via a very unique and highly unlikely or thought to be unlikely vehicle. So I'd like to start by asking, are pool/shared rides the path to higher earnings in the future? By sharing a ride, you can discount each ride less over time and increase drivers' pay for quote-unquote full miles. Now, when Lyft entered the shared ride space, they set out to be different than Uber. They pay drivers the same amount per mile per minute on shared rides, no matter if they had two separate passengers in the car or not. This first got me to thinking, if the way this is going to work is, and the only way I believe it's going to work is if people continue to convert towards sharing rides. Now, in the beginning, it feels rough. There's a lot of friction because there's not enough people going in the same direction to make the algorithms and these routes work the most efficient that they can. So you have drivers getting frustrated. Obviously, I would too. You actually have drivers gaming the system with either last ride or turning off ride requests after you receive the first request on pool or shared. And I believe that this is counterproductive towards moving into the future. We're not having less people on Earth. We're continuing to grow the population. We can only grow our roads so big, which means we need to start thinking about how to revolutionize transportation moving into the future. Are we going to have flying drones with people in it? I don't know, probably at some point. But what can we do now? What are some of the things that we can change now that can affect how we interact from a transportation aspect? I took this directly from Lyft's website. You are always paid the base fare plus the time and distance of the entire route that you take, which means your earnings aren't affected if the first rider doesn't get matched with another rider on the trip. Just backing up the fact that you get paid the same amount for a Lyft shared ride as you do for a regular Lyft ride. Admittedly, I cannot tell you when they updated their website last, so this is the most current information that they have. I personally no longer live in a market where there are shared rides. However, I've done plenty of pool and even a few express pool rides over the years, and I share the same frustrations as a lot of drivers do. The one thing that I used to do, however, is if somebody was taking a long trip and they took a pool, I would take surface streets rather than highways. That way I guaranteed to get matched up with more people along the way, thus making more money. Now, this can potentially piss off your rider. However, I just reminded them that, hey, you chose the cheaper option, therefore we take the cheaper route. That may or may not have adversely affected my rating over time, but hey, I'm still an active rideshare driver. I still get paid the same as I always have, so obviously it couldn't have affected me that much. Now, this works for Lyft and drivers only if more riders start using shared rides as most people are using single passenger rides currently. Volume is the key here, guys. Volume is the key. The higher the ride count, the more likely that these routes that they are putting in become more and more efficient for drivers. So I know a lot of you that are listening are probably in rural or very spread out and not very dense populated areas. And you might be saying, well, this will never work here, Chris. It won't work there yet. However, they have plenty of cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Tampa, Miami, New York, tons of places to refine this technology and make it to where it's scalable even in rural areas. So how can companies pay drivers more while charging riders less? That's the biggest question. And I partly answered it before. Volume and efficiency. The more people getting in and out of the same vehicle on an efficient route, the more revenue that will be generated. As more revenue is generated, Lyft and Uber can start to actualize profitable operations. So, for instance, Uber and Lyft, they have a fixed cost per mile for their insurance, which means every single person that they can get inside the car on a separate account, the lower their insurance costs them, because they're only paying for a car to move 1 mile, they're not paying for each one, which is going to help them save significantly. But it'll also give them the ability to pay more. So the new incentives that I feel are coming are, hey, if you take shared rides, we'll pay you X amount per mile for every X amount of accounts that you have on your ride. So I believe that they could probably comfortably push 15, 20% on shared rides over the regular single ride, which would incentivize drivers to not take the single rides and take the shared rides. And then they can do something on the rider side to incentivize them to take shared rides without giving away the house. So the idea is, if I'm a passenger and I take a shared ride, and instead of it taking 15 minutes to get to my destination, it takes me 19 minutes to get to my destination, and I can save $3 on that ride, chances are I'm probably going to do it again because, 4 to 5 minutes isn't going to make or break me. $3 each time, that can add up, especially if I'm a frequent rider. Now, if I can put 2 to 3 different accounts in that car, that same car, going in roughly the same direction, I can get more people into the car paying the same amount as that person is, thus increasing my profit margin as a company. And yes, I have to incentivize drivers to take these rides, so I'm going to pay them a little bit more per mile. Like I said, 15, 25%. I don't know the actual numbers. That's just a wild guess off the top of my head, because I believe that they will see a 70 to 90% increase in terms of revenue on those kinds of rides. So for them to share 20% of it, that seems relatively easy without the company having to break the bank, considering they're going to be saving money elsewhere. I know a lot of drivers really, really, really have a distaste, or they have massive amounts of disdain for shared rides, but I believe it's the future ultimately. Number one, it's going to have to be if human drivers want to continue to drive. You have to accept it, because if not, then that's just more incentive for these companies to go out and push driverless, technology even faster than it's already being pushed. I know we don't like to do things, but just think about this for a second. Cars that drive themselves don't strike, they don't protest, they don't complain, they just fucking go. They take shared rides, they take XL rides, they take all kinds of rides. The car does not care. So I believe that it is in the best interest of rideshare drivers today to take your emotions, put them in a little box, and leave them at the house when you get in the car. I know that's going to set some people off. It's probably going to piss a hell of a lot of people off. It's in your best interest that you put your feelings away. Nobody gives a shit whether you want to do shared rides or not. Yes, you ultimately have the choice. And guess what? Companies also ultimately have the choice to decide how much money and how much resources they're willing to put into driverless technology to replace you altogether. I always like to say, technology doesn't progress because it's for the sake of progression. It's because certain things happen. People act a certain way. Human beings act a certain way. They react, whatever you want to call it. And from there, the idea and the ignition is sparked to replace that person. Real quickly, I don't want to digress into this subject on this particular podcast, but when you bitch about how much you make at McDonald's, your ass is going to get replaced. When you bitch about how much you make here, literally we live in 2019. Computers can do a lot of what humans can do, and they will only continue to get better at doing those, plus they will learn more skills. So, obviously we want to drive for as long as we would like to, right? So that doesn't mean forever. Well, hopefully it doesn't mean forever. I know a lot of us, including myself, I use this to supplement, the company that I run. So every dollar that I can make doing Uber and Lyft is one less dollar that I take out of my business. So for me, when I'm in Miami, I take shared rides. Do I like it necessarily? No, of course not. I think they're stupid. But I check my feelings at the door and I just do it. I just do it because my other option is to not take any rides, because in South Florida, shared rides is actually becoming even more and more popular. And in major metropolitan cities, shared rides are becoming more and more popular. And guess what? These companies are going to continue to incentivize riders to use it. What this is going to do is it's going to squeeze those drivers who swear up and down that they'll never do shared rides, and it's going to get to the point to where there are no single rides. anymore. And then the companies are going to go, and what? So you're not going to do shared rides, so that means you're no longer going to drive for us. I know that seems kind of harsh, but it is what it is. It's the world that we live in. That's where we're moving. Hell, honestly, shared rides is just the bridge to driverless technology. That's the end game. There's a road in between those 2 points. How long it is, nobody knows how long it is. Some people say it's decades away. Me personally, I think it's way sooner than most people would ever dream of it being. But nonetheless, I believe that these express pool in particular, and shared rides have the ability or create an environment in which drivers can make more money. The companies could pay more money, and they could actually make more money by having more people in one car at a single time, going in the same general direction. But once again, nobody's going to see any type of profitable measures from these rides if we're not getting more people to take them. Because express pool rides and shared, I don't know what Lyft calls theirs. It's like Super Saver shared rides or shared saver rides. I don't know, whatever it is. These rides are nothing more than on-demand bus stops, which I think is kind of cool. But once again, I'm looking at it from a non-driver perspective on that. So when you think about it, they're able to put 3 to possibly even 4 accounts in one car that are being picked up in one place and being dropped off in a central location in another place. It's an on-demand bus stop. That's all it is, people. It's an on-demand bus stop. They are revolutionizing the idea of public transportation. The more buses that they can get off the road and just utilize the cars that are already on the road, in theory, there will be less traffic. Nobody likes pulling up behind those big fucking buses when they... Nobody wants to hear that shit. People just want to walk out their door, maybe walk a block, jump inside of a nice car. By nice, I just mean clean. Let's not get over, head over heels about all this, but people just want to jump in a nice clean car, pay a few bucks, and go down the road rather than jumping on a bus, sitting. I'm not going to describe the public transit system because who knows, in some places where this will be listened to, it's great. So obviously, Express Pool will take longer to get there. But this is the way towards the future, and I would just like to think, how can these new products or new services or new versions of a service, how can it benefit both the company and the driver at the same time? And I like to look at numbers, so I like to dive into the analytical side of shared rides. So, if Uber is fixed on $1 million per vehicle and they're paying X amount per mile on insurance, they are incentivized to have more people in the car, because the more people in the car, the less they're paying for insurance. Because the difference is if you can put 3 riders in one car, as a company, you're paying insurance for one ride. Whereas, if those 3 people were to take 3 separate cars, now Uber is having to pay insurance for 3 separate rides. So it's a unique view of the whole shared rides, which is when you look at it from the business side and how economically it can work both for the company, which can, like I said, they can actualize, profitable operations. That doesn't mean that the company in general is profitable. That just means that the rideshare operational side of things is profitable, like operational, like positive. Doesn't mean that they're not going to dump a ton of money into everything else, but at least rideshare will be covering itself. And I believe that they'll be able to say, instead of, an Uber X ride costing $7, they can charge that rider $4. Well, guess what? If they can get 4 from 3 separate passengers, that's $12 that they have coming in on a $7 ride. Let's just bump it up to $8 or $9. So you're talking about $3 that they can make. And even if each driver to make an extra $1 on each of these minimum trips, it's a numbers game. Like, that could actually change some people's, depending on how much you drive, that can actually change, your financial outlook. Imagine if you do 5,000 rides a year. That's at least $5,000 extra dollars a year coming into your pocket. And it's not because the company started charging more. In fact, they actually started charging people less. They just have the ability to pay you a little bit more. So if you like the episode, cool, like, subscribe, share, all that cool shit. And if you don't, that's cool. Throw me a thumbs down. Tell me, how terrible I am in the comment section or whatever you'd like to do. Like, that's cool. And just you guys have a great day.